the Gemini API made context engineering much simpler by using the new URL Context tool. It lets you enrich the context of your prompt by using web-accessible data, such as PDF, web pages, code repos, CSVs, and more, by just providing the list of their direct URLs. So let's see how it works. Showcase two examples and quickly go through the limitations. So it's very easy to use. You start by importing the Google SDK, then you create a tools list that must contain the URL context tool. Then you need to pass those tools to the call you make to the LLM, so here in the config. Then it's super simple. You create your prompt here, and you just inline the URL you want the model to use. Then the model will fetch all the URLs that are publicly accessible, inject the context in the prompt, and answer your request by using the data it knows, but also the data fetched from the different sources you referenced. Now I will use the tools in a practical example. So first I will show you how you can use this new URL context to compare the price of two different tools using their web page. So the first step is to import a few libraries, load your environment variables, and then we create a quick function to display Markdown in the terminal beautifully so we can read the final report. So we use rich Markdown here, and this tool will format the output of the model nicely in our terminal. Now the function to compare the price. So I enable the URL context by defining the URL context tool in the list of tools, and then I fetch two URLs, so OpenAI and Anthropic. Then I have a simple prompt that asks to compare the API pricing between OpenAI and Anthropic and create a final report. So let's see how it works. The code is available on GitHub, so you can have a quick look at the example and run them in your own computer. So the model is done generating, and we get a nice report here about the difference in pricing between the two tools. So here you have the GPT-5, 5 mini, and so on, real time. You also have the Anthropic pricing, the grouping. I asked the model to group by categories, so you can compare the large models, medium models, and small models. And you have a bunch of details about tokens and so on. So as you can see, it's really useful. It can really help you to enhance your research because you are not limited to 2 URLs, but way more. I think the limit is 20. So you can bring a lot of sources and get useful reports that would take hours to compute by hand. Now let's take a look at the second example. So here we have an example called Analyze PDF. In this one, we compare two PDF from Arxiv, so research papers. Here I have the direct URL to the PDF of the DeepSeek V3 paper and then the Quen 3 paper. And I asked the model to compare those technical reports and give me a final summary of the key differences between the two models. So here we need to call the Analyze PDF function. And if we run the example, you'll get the final report. It takes a while as the PDF are larger, so you bring a lot into the context. But Gemini is pretty fast, so it's not that much of a problem. And that's it. You get our final output with model architecture, scale and training data, training methodologies, and so on. It's really useful and make you gain a lot of time in those tedious research activities. So that was only two simple examples, but it's very useful in general for data extraction. So you have a lot of sources and you need to extract some, let's say, structured data out of it. You want to compare documents, so comparisons between different sources. You can also synthesize content and generate summaries or original blog posts and so on by merging a lot of sources and getting a final article. And finally, it's also really interesting because it works with GitHub repositories. So you can analyze GitHub code and the documentation of various repositories if you have questions about the code, if you need to find the best way to implement something using a tool. Finally, you need to keep in mind the 3 main limitations. So first you have the pricing, because all the content that you retrieve from the URL sources will be added to your input tokens, so it will increase the price you pay to the API. Also, you have the request limit, so you can add up to 20 different URLs to the context. And finally, the content size per URL. So you have a limit of 34 megabytes per URL, which is fairly large. So those limitations should not be a big problem in practice. So the new Gemini URL Context tool is really useful if you want to fetch any web accessible data to augment your context. It's very easy to use, so give it a try. Let me know if you liked it, and see you in the next one.